That morning, the sky was so bright, giving new spirit to every creature that woke up. The sound of birds chirping happily added to the harmony of nature that was already so enchanting. In a village located far from the hustle and bustle of the city, I started my steps towards the rice fields. It seemed like a simple routine, but for me, every step on the muddy ground was full of peace. With a light heart, I walked slowly through the vast rice fields. The mud that stuck to my feet did not interfere with the joy. Trained hands nimbly scratched the wet soil, looking for snails hidden among the grass. Every time my fingers touched the hard shell of a snail, a small smile appeared on my face. There was no feeling of tiredness, only joy in simplicity. Every now and then, I stopped to enjoy the breeze that carried the scent of wet soil. In the distance, the morning mist slowly disappeared, making room for the rising sun. The world around me seemed so peaceful and calm, far from the hustle and bustle of the outside world. Everything felt so connected, like a unity between nature and myself. I continued to take steps, following the trails that only existed on days like this. When the snails were finally found, my happiness was unstoppable. In the silence of the rice fields, every hunt felt like a small victory, one that didn't need to be bragged about to others. And now, under the morning sunlight that gently touches the rice field soil, I walk with enthusiasm. The snails that are scattered among the straw left over from the harvest and the muddy puddles make my heart even more excited. It feels like finding a small treasure in every corner of this rice field. I walk faster, enjoying every second that passes in the midst of simple happiness. This newly harvested rice field frees me. The land that was once filled with neat rice plants is now wide open, giving me the freedom to walk without fear of damaging anything. Every step I take on this muddy ground seems to connect me to nature, with the silence that is only heard by the wind and the sounds of the surrounding nature. The steps feel light, even though sometimes the mud touches my feet, but that actually brings me closer to the reality that I am part of the land I tread. This rice field is still young, the newly grown rice challenging the sky, giving a calming green nuance. But there is one thing to note: these snails, the young rice eaters, continue to breed in this land. They hide under the mud, exploring the stalks of rice that are starting to grow, looking for food, and destroying the plants that we hope will grow well. These snails love young rice. They eat away at the tender stalks of rice, making them a pest that can ruin the harvest. Therefore, hunting snails here is not just about finding something to eat or sell, but also part of the effort to keep the rice plants growing well. Of course, we also know that these snails have a role in the rice field ecosystem, helping to clean up organic waste. However, when there are too many of them, they can be a problem. I kept moving, enjoying the journey. The snails remained my loyal companions, accompanying me on this unhurried journey. The day was getting later, but I still didn't feel like leaving. It felt like, in this place, time slowed down. The newly harvested rice fields seemed to give me the opportunity to experience life in a different way. A moment that will never be repeated, an experience that may not be found anywhere else. I smiled, looking at the sky that was getting brighter. Free. I felt free, so simple yet so meaningful. The feet that stepped on the muddy ground made my body work harder. Over time, sweat began to flow profusely on my body, dripping down my forehead, then falling onto the wet ground. I didn't care. The more sweat flowed, the more I felt as if my body was undergoing a workout. Every time I bent down to check the hidden snail shells, my body movements felt more intense. When I bent down and tried to reach the snails that were hard to reach, my body muscles felt like they were working. Even after hours, I felt like I had just finished exercising. My body that was starting to get tired actually gave me a strange sense of comfort, a feeling of freshness that came after working hard. Sweat continued to flow profusely, wetting my clothes, but it did not dampen my spirits. In fact, the longer it went on, the more alive I felt. Every movement of my body, every step I took, felt like it gave me new strength. My body began to feel lighter, although sweat was still pouring out. I walked through the rice fields with enthusiasm, as if nothing could stop me. The snails, with their shiny shells, seemed to be a small reward for every drop of sweat that fell. But what was more noticeable was that I felt my body getting fitter, as if I was getting benefits from every movement I made. There was no significant feeling of tiredness, because every step I took, every effort to reach the snails hidden under the muddy ground, were all part of a process that made me feel healthier. Even though sweat was drenching my entire body, I knew that my body was learning to become stronger. The heat of the sun that was starting to sting no longer made me feel uncomfortable. On the contrary, I felt more alive. I could feel the pulse in my body, my heart beating faster, as if my body was celebrating every movement I made. I didn't need to find a reason to stop. Every movement in this rice field, although simple, gave me its own pleasure. My body became healthier without having to be in a gym full of machines or fitness equipment. And the sweat that kept flowing made my body feel different. Fresher, more alive. I smiled to myself, enjoying how simple yet useful this trip was. Hunting snails in the rice fields, without me realizing it, had become a natural way to keep my body healthy. And I, in the middle of this wide and open rice field, felt free, felt alive, like my body and the nature around me were united in simple fitness. Unknowingly, time continued to pass, and the sun was getting higher. I decided to take a short break under a large, shady tree. With a smile that never disappeared, I looked at the results of the day's hunt, just a little bit of happiness found among the muddy soil and straw left over from the harvest. That simple world provided space to find true peace, away from all the hustle and bustle.